Hello and welcome to Ditch Witch Diaries. Today we are going back to the herbs and we're each gonna do an herb. I'm gonna do one and our lovely Raven is gonna do one and she's laying down so you're just gonna hear her voice. She's gonna be like the disembodied voice. So
I'm here, but you can feel me, but you can't see me.
exactly. So that's what's going to happen right now, and she's going to kick it off. So go right ahead, Raven.
Awesome. All right. So, kicking off our third herb for this series, we are going to talk about pine. So, we're going to talk about pine in general, but I am especially going to focus on pitch, which we'll talk about what pine pitch is. But pine in general, but specifically some pitch. So
I love pine pitch. I just want to
I
tell you that
do.
I love it. And I don't know do you focus on all the other things you can do with this awesome stuff?
Um, a little bit. I talk about it. I do talk about like a lot of the folklore and the like historical uses a little bit. And then I talk about yeah, so a little bit. Yeah.
Okay, so,
Yeah.
okay, good.
But I also feel like it would open up a good conversation for us to have about it. So
Okay, perfect.
Okay, so let's talk about the difference between sap resin and pitch. Now, Rebecca and I, along with our other friend Roz, we've had this discussion before, and it took us a while, I think, to get down to the nitty-gritty of the difference between, especially like between them. So let's talk about it. So sap. A lot of people think that like anything that's sticky that comes out of a tree is sap, but that's not really true. So sap is mostly water, and it carries water and minerals from the roots to up to the leaves through this specific level of the tree or the wood called sapwood. And it carries water, sugar, and then other nutrients from the leaves to the rest of the tree. So it basically goes up and down. It's like a little elevator, and it brings these nutrients in the water throughout the tree through this specific layer of wood. So sap is really thin. You can see it kind of drips out here. Now, it runs through sapwood when the temperatures vary. So it's going to move mostly when we see a big change in the temperature. And because the change in the temperature causes change in the pressure inside of the plant, which moves this watery like liquid through the tree. And so sap is like syrup. This is how we make syrup. If you've ever used real syrup, right? Like the actual real syrup, it's very thin. And that's what sap is. It's very, very thin.
Interesting.
Then we have resin. So resin is like the much more sticky and like hardened stuff that comes from the trees. And other plants, but it's mostly found in trees. So it's not sap. A lot of people think, oh, well, resin is just hardened sap, but that's not true. It's actually completely different things. And so the Forest Service says resins are plant products that are not soluble in water. They harden when exposed to the air, which sap does not, and they don't play a role in the process of the plant, which sap does, right? Sap is needed to help keep the plant healthy, but resin isn't. Um, and so you can kind of see what resin is here. You can pick resin like off of trees and stuff. So resins are produced in special cells of the plants called resin cells, and they're mostly produced when there's like an injury to the plant because the resin is released to help. It's kind of like how our blood like helps cut off like a wound, right? If we have a cut, then our blood like cuts, it closes off that
Yeah,
wound.
it's like a plant scab.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. So it seals over that wound. So resin and sap are very different. Then we have pitch. Now, this is where it gets kind of complicated because a lot of things online show that resin and pitch are the same things, but they are not. They are the same thing, but pitch is a processed resin. So with pitch, it is usually mixed with other ingredients, usually wax, charcoal, ash, or fat, and that creates the pitch. So you can see the pitch here. So it is resin, but it's resin mixed with other stuff or just processed, which we'll talk about on the next slide. So they're different, even though a lot of people use pitch and resin interchangeably, they are different. So pitch can also be produced if you heat the wood. You don't want to burn it. So not like over an open flame, but if you heat it, then the heat process causes the tar to ooze out of the wood. Yes, it tar leaches out, which I thought was sounded so weird, but I looked it up. It definitely is. It leaks tar. And so you don't have to mix these other substances like the wax to create pitch. You can create pitch by itself, but you just have to heat up the wood very slowly and not burn it, just heat it up. So usually it's mixed with other substances because that's just kind of found easier.
Hmm.
Okay, so I think that was and then another thing is it seems like it's solid, but it's really not. You can actually shatter it if you like hit it with something hard like a hammer or throw it against a rock, but it's technically fluid, but it's just really, it's like an even thicker form of molasses almost. It's like very thick. And so it can shatter, but it's not technically a solid because it's just a really thick and slow moving liquid. Now, if you buy pitch, you have to kind of be careful because a lot of pitch is like store-bought pitch is also made from petroleum, which is like fine if you don't mind petroleum, but if you want a more natural substance without the petroleum, you have to look at what's being added to it.
I bought pine pitch before and it's resin.
Nice. Yeah.
That's what
Yeah, I think a
they
lot
say,
of
resin.
I think a lot of the more like again, I'm not against
Yeah.
petroleum necessarily, but I think that if you're buying from like an actual reputable source or like even a witchy source, there it's probably resin based. If you're buying it from like some shady site where they kind of cut corners on price, it might be petroleum, but
I mean, it just looks like they actually gathered resin. Like I love
yeah,
pine resin. Pine resin
yeah,
is like one of my all-time favorite substances in the world, and that's
yeah,
I bought pine pitch before.
yeah.
It didn't seem like it had undergone this process. It seemed like that they were what is it called when they were putting those two things together, resin and pitch, and they were just
Yeah.
yeah.
Like resin and charcoal or ash or whatever.
No, they were just like they were just like all they were doing was they had called resin pitch.
Oh, yeah,
So
yeah,
they
yeah.
when I bought pine pitch online, it just
Gotcha, gotcha.
yeah, like they just sent me pine resin, which is fine because I love pine resin, but it
Yeah,
certainly
yeah.
wasn't what you're talking about here.
Yeah, yeah. Yes, a lot of, like I said, a lot of places. I mean, when I was doing research, probably two-thirds of the places I looked at said pitch and resin were the same. And I was like, there's no way. Like all of these other places are saying that they're not. And so I just was
Yeah,
focusing more on the places that talked about the differences. And I was like, okay, this makes more
that's
sense.
rad. Okay.
So yeah, but I also yeah, I love resin too. And I mean, you and I both, we like go out and we just collect resin from
That's
trees
the
and we
best.
burn
I
it.
know.
It's so
That
good.
is, and that is, it's so nice and when you burn it too.
Yes,
It's
agreed.
delightful.
I love I love resin. I love like fresh resin when it's still a little sticky, you
Ooh,
know.
me too. I know.
Okay, so let's talk about some like folklore and historical uses. So it's associated. So we're talking about pine in general. When I talk about pitch specifically, it'll say like there'll be a like hyphen pitch up here.
Okay.
So it's associated with Dionysus, which has he's actually come up a lot recently. But the pine tree was sacred to him and the equivalent in Roman mythology. And so Dionysus we've talked about a lot, but he's kind of like the god of a good time, right? Like he's the god of like wine and ecstasy and celebration and stuff. And his followers would carry this staff that is like tipped with a pine cone, which is supposed to symbolize fertility, eternal life, spiritual awakening, which actually ties into a lot of the other folklore that we'll talk about. Um, and so pine is also seen in Greek and Roman mythology as a symbol of immortality. Again, like I said, relating to the pine cone. But one of the reasons is because pines are evergreens. And so, they always keep their color, their leaves and their quote unquote leaves, their needles like never brown. They are evergreens. And so they're linked to this ongoing, like perpetual life. And so sometimes they would be planted near tombs or burial sites to protect the souls of the dead or to ensure their rebirth potentially. And then there's some interesting Japanese folklore. So, pine trees, matsu, I'm guessing is how you would say that, matsu, symbolize longevity, steadfastness, spiritual endurance. They're often planted near Shinto shrines, which I'm not very knowledgeable about like Japanese culture, but I don't think this is the Shinto shrine. I think that the Shinto shrine is the one that has like three or four very simple bars, but I couldn't find a picture of that with the pine next to it, so I just did this one.
Okay.
Um, but the Shinto shrines are places of worship in the Shinto religion, which is a type of, like Japanese religion, and dedicated to kami and the spirits and the deities that are associated with the Shinto. And so it's seen as like a really powerful and spiritual tree for this kind of spiritual practice. And then the pine trees were also considered really sacred spaces for these kami, these like Shinto deities, because it was believed that the kami could descend and go like from other places, right? Like other realms and stuff, and kind of come back to us through these trees. And they would oh yeah, so then it would bring about the connection between like the earthly realm and the spiritual realm when these kami deities were kind of like in like living within this tree, and it was believed that it would keep the space kind of positive and bring in good spirits, which is cool because we don't often get a lot of information on Japanese folklore, I think, with our herbs. So I like that this
Had
is
a
like
couple
such a
of
big
them. Like I think in like the camphor.
camphor was a big one. Yeah.
And we've had it. I think we have had a couple of ones that have talked about these sacred trees. I'll try to find
Mm,
put links up to them.
yeah.
I think there have been a couple about these sacred trees that be
Yeah.
in camphor, and then there was another one too, I think, that
Mm,
we did.
nice. It seems like Roman and Greek comes up a lot, but I mean that it kind of makes sense because Roman and Greek, there's just a lot of information out there about those ones, but I like it when new ones come up.
Me too.
So pine is also featured in New Year's decorations, which is this. I'm gonna butcher this. Karumatsu, which is this. It's like bamboo, and then they use like this twine to wrap bamboo stalks with pines and flowers, which is supposed to bring in ancestral spirits. And then in I don't know how to say that either. No,
Oh,
I'm guessing no plays, which is a really classical type of Japanese play. It's a musical drama that's like it's really dramatic. And they're really beautiful. I was watching some videos on some when I was learning about this. But in these plays, a sacred pine tree typically serves as the gateway between human world and the spirit world. And so they're often depicted like somewhere on the stage, which is pretty
nice.
good. Yeah. Beautiful. Then we have Celtic and Northern European. So pine was used in Celtic like funeral rites, which ties into what we were talking about earlier. And it's because of its like purifying and protective properties. And so you would always, not always, but you would often see them on like funeral altars or altars associated with funerary rites. And then we have the Scots pine was believed to be a guardian tree. And so they would burn the needles and use the burning needles almost as like a cleanse, right? Like a smudge, basically. They would use them to clear away the negative energy and like protect from bad energies and bad spirits and stuff. And then pine cones were often placed on altars and burial sites to represent the soul needs for potential for rebirth. And so once again, we see this connection across cultures about pine being related to like rebirth and potential for life, which is pretty cool. I like it when there's carryover between cultures.
Mm-hmm.
Then we have Siberian shamanism. So pines often
That
resemble
image, by the way.
what?
I love that image,
I
by the way. It's
know. I
rad.
know. I love this picture. So pines were used to represent like this vertical connection between the three worlds. They believed in the three like worlds, so upper, middle, and lower worlds. And so there would be rituals in which the shaman, so the people would gather in either like near in huts or near huts, and there would be a pine tree, either like a still live one where near where they were gathered, or they would kind of like cut one and then anchor it inside of one of these like tents. And so the shaman would climb the actual pine tree, or they would like in a trance, like in a meditative state, like
Yeah.
emotionally, spiritually climb the pine tree, or they would climb the pole of the pine, which is now in the hut. But either way, they're climbing this pine, and the pine was said to represent the world tree, which is the axis mundi.
Mm-hmm.
And it was supposed to like climbing this pine tree was supposed to symbolize their ascent to other realms. And so they would utilize their like um shamanism, like those powers and the energies that they had learned through shamanism to bring back to like their people. So it's pretty cool. And then pine smoke is they use pine smoke as cleansing to drive away illness. So again, we're seeing it as like a very cleansing thing. I do love this picture. I found this picture like twice. I was trying to find a picture of like the shaman climbing the tree or like close to a tree, and this picture just kept coming up, and I was like, okay, it wants to be in the slide because I cannot get away from it. But
Awesome.
I
Okay, you're
love this
in.
picture. Yeah.
You found your way in. I love
Yeah.
it too. I'm all into
Representing the people.
it.
Then we have indigenous traditions. So a lot of different tribes saw pine as the symbol of peace and harmony with nature. So then we have the Iroquois Confederacy, which was if you don't know, a really powerful alliance between originally five Native nations, and then later on in the 1700s they added a sixth one. But these are the nations that came together, and they basically came together as like a front against external threats, which love to see. And so this is actually the Iroquois Confederacy flag, and you
I
can see a
love
pine
that.
right here.
Yeah.
Beautiful. And also among their folklore, they would plant the tree of peace, which is usually a white pine, to mark the union of the nations, which is why they included the pine tree on their flag. And then, pine resin was burned for cleansing and protection. So we see it a lot for cleansing and protection. They would also use it as a healing salve. They also used it as an adhesive, like a glue. They used this resin for this as well, but especially pitch for adhesive, waterproofing, and for like making something flammable, like for fire starter, for torches, things like that. It is very flammable, by the way.
Yes, it is, and that's why
Very
it's so
flammable.
it's so rad. I
Yeah,
swear,
it's
it's
so
like if you're
good.
like ever in a situation, in a
Mhm.
dire situation, and caught out in the middle of nowhere,
Yeah.
pine pine resin is your friend.
Yes, for sure. For sure. For multiple things. Like if you're out somewhere and let's say you have like a tent and it got a tear in it and you're in the rain, throw some resin or pitch on that bad boy. Like, all kinds of good stuff. Okay, so then spiritualism. So the pine cone appears symbolically in a lot of like Christian and just general esoteric like art as a reference to the pineal gland and or the third eye. And this is actually pretty cool. I didn't think about this, but this is supposed to look like either the top or the bottom of a pine cone.
Oh,
And so it's like representative of the third eye chakra and cool stuff, but you can
that's
kind of see
rad.
the similarities there. Okay, so pine pitch. The resin or the pitch, if it's the heated up resin, is kind of seen as the lifeblood of the tree. So, in a lot of different traditions, pitch was or resin is viewed as like the essence of the pine. And so it's kind of used to represent like the blood of the plant. And so it's kind of seen as like sacred. It was used with a lot of respect and a lot of rituals because it's seen as like the blood life force of the tree. And then also because it's flammable and fragrant, it's associated with fire and air potentially. Because we've talked about this before, but it was a long time ago. A lot of plant, and I don't know if we recorded at that point, but a lot of plants that are very fragrant are associated with air. So, like lavender is often very associated with air. And then because it's flammable, we also have that fire association. And so we have these two elements together, which create a really solid connection for like connection to spirits or gods or goddesses or anything like that, especially with things like transmutation, all kinds of good stuff
Yeah.
like that. Um, and honestly, if you added like sap into that mix too, you would have some water element as well. And then maybe some dirt from where the tree grew out, and then you got your four elements. And then protective barriers. So because it's really sticky, it has been used magically to like trap things, which we will kind of this is like a little bit more protection, but also banishing a little bit. We'll talk about it more at the end as it's associated with banishing.
Nice.
Okay, so then pitch specifically for Greece and Rome, it was used in funerary rites. It was used to embalm bodies or purify bodies. So tar and pitch are both antiseptic and aromatic, which we'll talk about later. And so that's why they were used in embalming and purification processes. Again, associated with Dionysus, but also with Pan, and specifically pitch for some reason has been associated with Pan, pitch and resin, not just pine in general, which I thought was really interesting. And I'm guessing it has some tie to like fire with Pan. I don't know very much about Pan. I don't know about a lot of gods, but much more well versed in the goddesses. But um, and then burned at temples for purification. So again, we're seeing it for a lot of burning.
Yeah.
And then in Egypt, pine resin, usually with like frankincense and myrrh, which we love. Pine resin was used for like mummification, which we've talked about some herbs too, quite a handful that were used in mummification processes as well,
Yeah.
and just general preparation for afterlife. And then so now we go on to the medicinal properties of pine generally. So fresh needles and buds are often picked in the springtime and they're called pine tops. Actually, we have a really big farmers market where I'm at, really, really big. And there's always this one vendor that wild harvests mushrooms and uh pine tops and oh my gosh, I forgot what they're called. I am obsessed with them. They're like the ferns, like the baby fern, fiddle ferns.
Oh.
So I love fiddle ferns. So that's like what they sell is the wild harvested mushrooms, pine tops, and fiddle ferns. And so she always comes in with these little baby pine tops, and I had never seen them before, but
Oh.
yeah, they're pretty common, I guess. But they're often boiled in water, and then like I should put tea in quotes because a lot of people call it tea, but we know it as
Infusion.
infusion. Yeah.
Exactly. An infusion.
Infusion is consumed for fevers, coughs, and colds. And then there's was a big herbalist, Tommy Bass, which I've come across this name a couple times. I'm not super familiar with this person themselves, but use the needles in like a steam for inhalation. So basically, instead of just drinking the infusion, they would like inhale it
Yeah.
to help break up mucus and things like that. And then I also found a couple people giving this recipe for the you could use it to drink the infusion, but also in like the inhalation, which is
Mhm.
to combine the pine tops with thyme and bee balm,
Mm.
which sounds nice.
Yeah. Very
Um,
nice.
okay, so medicinally for pitch specifically, antiseptic, antibacterial, anti-inflammatory. So we see it for four big things. Wound healing is a big one. It's a natural antiseptic and antibacterial, and it creates this barrier to protect the wounds from infection, exactly as it does with the tree, right? We talked about how like the resin is leaked out, and so it protects it. And so pitch and resin do the same thing. For skin conditions, especially things like eczema, psoriasis, acne, burns, you can use pitch. Probably, I would suggest like in a salve, maybe, or an ointment or something, or oil potentially. And then drawing out foreign objects. So because it's so sticky, it can help to pull things out, especially splinters, but any type of little debris. Like if you scraped yourself on like asphalt or dirt or something, you could put a little layer of pitch on it and it will help draw out all of those
Hmm.
things. And then anti-inflammatory, it can help reduce inflammation. And I even saw, I don't think I talked about it, but I saw somewhere say that you can put pitch in an ointment for arthritis. And I was like, yeah, that makes sense.
Ye old rheumatism cure.
Ye old rheumatism. So then I just give you some suggestions if you don't want to just rub some pitch on you. I mean, you can, but you could also put it
May
in,
never get it off.
yeah.
May have to just grow that skin out.
Oh God, so sticky. So putting it into like a salve, an infused oil, or like I said, direct application. And Rebecca and I mentioned, I think one of the last couple times we met that we could potentially go into like how to create a salve and how to create infused
Yes,
oils and stuff. So we'll go through that, but it's pretty fun. It's a fun process.
it's really fun.
Yeah.
I feel like all those are really fun. Tincture
Yeah,
is
I
fun, all those.
agree.
Yeah.
I agree. I didn't think that I would use, we've made all of these multiple times. And after I made the first salve, or after we made the first salve, our beeswax one, I didn't think that I was like, oh, this is cool, but I don't know if I will actually get through all of it. And I finished it in like a year, like the whole
Nice.
container. Yeah. And it wasn't even like a daily thing. It was for like scrapes and bruises. And I was like, this is going to last me forever. And it lasted a year.
Nice.
Okay, so let's talk about some magic then. So, pine in general. A lot of these we've talked about, but just kind of as a recap, protection and purification. So, pine needles, resin, you can use it to cleanse a space. Heal. Oh, also, I don't think I mentioned it, but I also make a like countertop cleaner with pine,
Oh
where I
yeah,
use,
of
yeah,
course.
yeah,
Pine
white,
Sol is uses
yeah,
actual pine.
exactly, yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, I just get it's super easy too. I just get white vinegar and I fill up a jug and then I shove as many pine needles in there as I possibly can fit. And then I'll do another one with white vinegar and orange peels and
Ooh,
lemon peels. And then I let them, marinate for a couple of months and then I combine them. And then that's my cleaner. So it's really
wow.
good. It smells amazing.
I bet.
And then okay, so then healing with like folk medicine and stuff, which we've talked about, the steam, salve, things like that. And then also dream magic. It's said that sleeping with pine needles under your pillow can help protect you against nightmares and bad spirits, which again ties back into like the protection
Yep.
aspect. So then pitch, it can be burned as an incense or added to funeral rites, which we've talked about. In Scandinavian and Germanic practices, it was used as a seal for protective charms. So you would make a protection charm and then seal it with pine pitch, set it aside, let it dry a little bit, and then you would use that. You're like sealing in the protective properties of the charm so that nothing can kind of take away the protection of
I
that
like that
charm.
idea.
And then witches, salves, and ointments sometimes used pitch. So this is just any type of salve, but you could also put it in like flying ointment. I mean, it's not going to add properties to like the flying aspect, but I mean, it could be used as a binder for that.
Yeah,
The quote unquote flying aspect, right? The spiritual flying.
exactly.
um, so then we have like Appalachian folk magic. Pitch was part of banishing and jinx breaking workings, often burned with sulfur, which I didn't even really think about, but I love that. And then you could also put a dab. I would suggest a very small dab, unless you want stuff getting stuck in there, but a little tiny dab on window seals or thresholds to prevent like negative spirits or sickness from coming in. And then you can also use resin to like in a little pouch as like a protection charm or something like that. And then for indigenous uses, it was used by a lot of different tribes in like medicine and ceremony. So obviously the magic associated with that. So not only is it, like physically beneficial in the medicinal properties, but also like spiritual medicine and things like that. So, like burned and cleansing smoke and sweat lodges. And sometimes like mixed with other herbs and placed in these like prayer offerings or spirit bundles. And oftentimes when they would gather the resin or the pitch, they would like chant or sing over it to kind of help infuse it with these magical properties.
I love that.
So, but oh yeah, this is interesting. Kind of like an overlap between historical uses and magical uses. So sealing sacred objects, obviously, as I talked about, like sealing in it energetically, but also because it creates waterproof. If you were to make like a witch's bottle or something, you could use pitch around the cork or the lid to seal in the spiritual stuff, but also so that the liquid doesn't leak out.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then Firecraft and torches. So you could like create your own like little candles or torch if you want. And then also like anointing, especially with fire tools or air tools potentially. I don't really use a lot of tools specifically for the elements because I bring in the elements themselves. But if you did use tools to represent the elements, then this would be a good like anointing thing for fire
Some
potentially.
tools are like specifically like if you have a candle snuffer or if you have like something that's specifically used for fire, like a cauldron that's like a an iron cauldron, like a cast iron cauldron that you use for creating
Mm,
fires or something that was specifically a fire tool.
yeah.
So
Yeah. I don't like I I know a lot of people use like bell for air, right? And I understand that association because the sound of the bell kind of carries on the air, and I understand that association. Um, but I don't really use that. Like if I'm gonna use air, I'm usually using something like incense and the smoke from the incense
yeah,
or something.
that works too. Yeah.
Yeah, but like yeah, if you wanted to use some type of like um tool or something, you could anoint it with this. And then so banishing, drawing out, baby. That's what I'm using it for. I'm using it to draw shit out that I don't want near me and trapping it in this very sticky molasses-like substance to get it away from me. And then I'm going to get rid of the pitch. So yeah, that's the banishing.
I love that.
Yay,
Hey, oh, that's wonderful. This has been wonderful.
not bad.
Not at
Little
all.
pine.
That's rad. I love pine, and we live in a place like whenever I'm out around pine trees, I'm always gathering the resin. Always.
Yeah.
Place that I see it, I'm like trunk, trunk, trunk. I'm like,
Me too. I have like a big old oak leaf that it's big. It's like bigger than my hand that I picked up off of the ground hiking one day, and then I dried it in like this big dictionary that I have because it was the only book big enough. And then I molded it to into like almost like a bowl. And so every time I collect resin, I put it in this like maple leaf.
that's
That's
so
really cool.
rad. That's so
Yeah.
rad. I love that.
Yeah.
Very nice. Well, awesome. So, thank you for joining us and learning all about pine and especially pine, it's specifically pine pitch. And we are going to go on to the next herb in the series next time. And then after that is going to be the last week, and it's going to be about kind of more a theoretical look at banishing.
I'm
So,
excited for that
I
actually.
know, me
It'll
too.
be good discussions.
Exactly. Anyway, so we will see you at the next Ditch Witch Diaries.
Bye.